Hi, my name is Harriet. I am here to do an asthma basics video for World Asthma Day. The first Tuesday in May is World Asthma Day. It has been for many years. The month of May is Allergy and Asthma Awareness Month. So today, being World Asthma Day, I'd like to do a short asthma basics video that should be used to have people understand a little bit more about asthma, some of the medications, and some of the triggers. Okay, so the first thing is, what is asthma? And asthma is an inflammatory condition in your lungs. The way, I have great models here that I'm going to show you. This is what a normal bronchial tube looks like. Do you notice how this is open? There's no redness, it's nice and pink. I can go right through it. Now, if I were to show you what one with asthma looks like, with inflammation, this is what happens inside our bronchial tubes. It is for this reason that you could get the sound of wheezing, that squeaking sound. I really sometimes like to use a balloon and I blow it up, and then I narrow the airway to when I want to release the air, and you will hear the sound kind of like whistles out. That's because we made the airway more narrow. That's kind of the same thing that happens when we're talking about someone having asthma and wheezing, is that you've had this wide open airway, and now this airway is swollen, it is inflamed, you've constricted it, you also have phlegm. So there's constriction and phlegm and inflammation going on. You don't want this kind of bronchial tube. Ideally, it should be like this. However, with asthma, our goal is to not have this. We try to keep the inflammation down. So one of the things, I have this chart here, which basically shows you what I just showed you right now, is what is asthma. So a bigger picture of your lungs right here. This is a nice open bronchial tube. This is an inflamed, constricted, narrower bronchial tube. That is what happens inside. So asthma is a chronic disease, or condition, whichever way you want to call it. And it can't be cured. As many people think you can cure your asthma, it doesn't happen. It just cannot be cured. It can be well controlled with the right medication, and symptoms can be treated, and we can work to bring down that inflammation. But once you're asthmatic, you always have, I like to call them twitchy airways. Your airways are they could be responsive at any time and tighten up. So what are some symptoms of asthma? Some people have talked about, shortness of breath, chest tightness, wheezing, coughing. All of those things are important. Also, it's important to note when your symptoms are happening, because there's different types of asthma. If you're fine, but the only time that you have a problem is at night, there is something called nocturnal asthma. If you're fine and the only time you have symptoms are when you exercise, you can have something called exercise-induced asthma. The treatments of these things are pretty similar, but it's just a matter of identifying your triggers. Now that is the biggest problem that we need to also treat when we're finding what ways we can control our asthma. So, for example, I have some really kind of cute cards here that I use a lot. This is like what on the bed, like dust mites are a trigger. This one the other night was a trigger for me. This was smoke. That's my son running by. Comorbid conditions, obesity, big problem with people who are asthmatic. If they're obese, they have more trouble breathing. Other types of triggers that you can identify. Roaches. Believe it or not, we can be allergic to roaches. It is a huge, huge problem in New York City. Definitely a problem with roaches. Other things that are a problem, car exhaust, so air pollution, all that kind of stuff. The PM2.5s, it's kind of really important since we're talking about N95 masks. The air pollution, the PM2.5 is a known trigger to our lungs. Another problem. Household cleaners and air fresheners and things like that. These are known triggers. I don't use any of these in my own house. I try to use as natural as possible. I did find through this whole corona thing that Lysol aggravates my asthma. So I've had to stay away from using the spray. It's definitely a problem. Pets, dogs, cats, rabbits, birds. Anyone can be allergic to anything. They are triggers, just so you know. Oh, my favorite, smelling the roses. So we are in pollen season, and yes, the pollen can definitely set off an asthma response. I can't smell tomato plants. When I do, I immediately get tight. I don't know why. According to my pulmonologist, it's because they're very fragrant, and that's what causes my constriction. So household plants also. Also, they can be a source of mold, which is another type of trigger. This one we should all know by this point, cigarette smoke. We should not be smoking for many reasons, but secondhand smoke can cause an asthma attack. Smoking itself can cause asthma. The other things that I don't have cards for, there's other comorbid conditions like GERD. Acid reflux can actually inflame and irritate your airway. There is weather-induced asthma, believe it or not, when there's barometric pressure changes or the weather goes from too cold to too hot or too hot and humid. Weather can definitely trigger asthma attacks as well. I actually have my little, this is what I used to give out. Here we go. So I have my lovely old sheet that I used to use. So air pollution. Oh, another big one, and while we want to talk about are infections. So personally for me, my main trigger are colds and viral infections. There is a lot of concern with coronavirus right now. With asthmatics right now, the data is a bit mixed, but it's actually kind of showing that if you're asthmatic, it's not hitting you as hard. But colds, flu in general are a pretty bad trigger for people with asthma. Like I said, nighttime, household products, environmental allergies, dust mites. If you work in a factory, so things with a lot of chemicals, sawdust, machine dust, flour, if you're working in a bakery, that has actually been found to cause asthma. If you're working with cotton or hemp or things like that, they may have mold in it. So it's really important to assess your environment. Another one which many people may not think about is emotions. And emotions play a rather large role. So if you're stressed or if you're crying, that can definitely trigger asthma attack. One trigger for me is, believe it or not, laughing. Laughing consistently throws me into having a spasm. So people can have an attack from laughing, from frustration, from anger, from laughing too hard, from crying. So emotions are a big thing, and so are smoke. So those are just like the main triggers, besides, you know, foods, pollens, animals, like I said, all those kinds of things. Oh, and one other one is sulfites, which has been known to trigger asthma as well. So those are your triggers. Now, what I want to talk about very briefly, like I said, this is going to be brief, and it's already like 10 minutes. So, these things are becoming really important with the treatment of COVID going on right now because they're not wanting to use these things. I personally like this better, but because of COVID, they're afraid that the nebulizer will aerosolize the COVID virus. I personally find when I'm sick, this goes down to my lungs much better, but so be it. This is called a spacer. What you do is you put your medication, your rescue inhaler. This is ProAir, which there is a shortage of right now. You put your ProAir in here, you spray it, and the medication gets stuck into the chamber, and then that way you have the ability to slowly breathe it in versus many times people take it like taking it out, you take it off, and instead people would take it like this. Oh, and you always have to shake your inhaler. You would take it like this and you'd be like, like that, and in your mouth, a tight seal, some of the medication would escape. So you don't want that to happen. A spacer is the best thing. There's different kinds, there's different brands. It's really important, especially for young kids who may not have the correct technique, to have a spacer. This is a nebulizer. This has tubing. This attaches to a machine, and it aerosolizes. You can use different types of solution. This is plain albuterol. This is level albuterol, versus otherwise known as Zopanex. It is the same medication that you would find in this, but is in liquid form, and you would put it in here. I personally like those only when I'm really sick. On a normal day, I would use this if I needed it. So now let's talk into our other category of medication very quickly, called controller medication. So I have asthma, or say you have asthma, and you have to be on a controller medication. There are many different kinds of controller medications. There's pills like Singulair, which target something very different. There are inhaled corticosteroids or mixture medications where they're double action. So this is just a steroid. This is budesonide. This is this is methomethazone. This is QVAR, and it is taken every day, no matter how you feel. If you feel good, you still take it, because this is what keeps this inflammation down. So it's important, no matter how you feel, to take this one every day. This is a sample of Advair Discus, which is 2 drugs in one. It's a little bit of a different methodology of how to take it. These are called meter dose inhalers. This is an HFA. It's not dry powder inhaler. They replace these. These are like the aerosols. These are a dry powder inhaler. This is a combination. The Advair Discus, mine, because this is a sample, is not purple, but the regular ones are purple, are a mixture of a steroid and a long-acting bronchial dilator. So the theory is that the inflammation will be taken down and it will relax your airway. So that's why you have a dual action drug. That's a different type of drug that you can use. There's many different types of controller medications that are on the market. In addition, there is now biologics, which are by injection, which can be used depending on the type of asthma you have. Eosinophils, if they are high, you can take a different, there's different drugs on the market like Xolair, and now you have a bunch of new ones that target different things, the biologic nature of your asthma. So that's an interesting progress. This is another type of medication. This is called Spiriva Resmat. This one according to the latest guidelines, I don't agree with it. They're saying if you can't get your hands on this, you can use this. This really should be used as a controller medication. It originally was approved for COPD, but they found it works for asthmatics as well. So this is another type of medication. I don't want to get into the big brand names of things, but you know, if you're looking for different types of controller medications, that's definitely something you might want to talk about. When we're talking about asthma care and management, this is also kind of important. People get something, this is called a peak flow meter. Now, everyone with asthma should, not to say that they do, should get an asthma action plan. So the asthma action plan has different colors, and my photocopy, I just had like a random photocopy, but the colors, green, you're good. Yellow means, you know, things are going on, you might need to add some medication, and red is like you're in an emergency. There's a peak flow chart on the bottom of it, and what happens is you would take your peak flow, not all doctors give it, but most do. You would take your peak flow and you would establish your personal best. And then what would happen is if your personal best, let's say, starts falling, that might be a sign that something's going on. So like if you're in the yellow zone and you start having signs of a cold, or you were exposed to a trigger, or you're getting chest tightness, coughing at night, that might be when you go to your yellow zone. And that's where on an action plan you would add on certain medication, how often, and how much. These are really important. Those of us in the food allergy world know that we have food allergy action plans. I don't see a lot of asthma action plans being used. So it's important to ask your doctor for an asthma action plan as well. Some of the signs of asthma, of an asthma attack happening, the way children may describe it. When I actually, still as an adult, get it, my chin gets really itchy, believe it or not. My back gets itchy. So a kid may say that their back itches, their chin itches. If at any point someone can't talk and it's like really hard to talk, that's a sign that they're not getting enough oxygen and it's struggling to talk. That's a real big problem. The other things you want to look for, nasal flaring, and if this area is right here, if they're like struggling and their shoulders are moving in and you have like here and nasal or like going like that, that's also a sign that they're struggling. And then I'm not going to show my shirt, but if you see like the stomach, if you have what you're looking for are pulling and retraction, they're working too hard and you see their ribs moving too hard, that is definitely a sign also that there's a problem. So those are signs to look for when things are going really downhill. So there's coughing. You may or may not have wheezing. So the wheezing is that high-pitched sound. It sounds like a whistle. You may have it, you may not. If it's really, if you're really tight, the wheezing may not happen because you can't get the air out. So wheezing is just one thing, and it drives me crazy because people are always like listening for the wheezing, and people say, but I'm tight, and there's no wheezing. You don't always have to have that wheeze, okay? You want to see if that chest is sucked in and if there's like retracting and pulling. So between the ribs, in front of the neck, and right here in the abdomen, and don't forget your nasal flaring as well. The most important thing is to know when you're going downhill and to get those medications on board quickly. Sometimes people wait too long and have tragic results, which is really sad. Identify your triggers, and to some extent, you may not be able to eliminate them, but you might be able to get into controller medication that will help you deal with that, which is really important. Years ago, they used to say that asthmatics couldn't do gym. that is not the case anymore. People who have asthma should definitely exercise, because remember, we have those comorbidities of like obesity. We want to make sure that people with asthma are active and leading an active life. It's really important that if your asthma gets in the way of you being active, then you speak to your doctor about getting on a controller medication and establishing some kind of plan or routine, in maybe pre-medicating before you work out, or going on a controller medication to reduce the swelling. But asthmatics need to be active, definitely. So that's no longer a myth. Now we want people to do that. I had this cute coloring book for when I was actually doing this. I used to give these out. These coloring books were cute for kids because it used to tell them about their triggers and stuff. But it also shows you about taking the spacer and your inhaler, and all kinds of things. And like, I love this back where it says kids with asthma can still have fun. And it's true. Kids and adults with asthma can still lead active, normal lives. The only concern is that when you start to feel symptoms, you need to take those symptoms seriously. And there's another drug that I did not put here, which is prednisone, which is an oral steroid. I want to clarify that an oral steroid is not the same as an inhaled steroid. The oral steroid is much stronger. It is systemic, meaning that it is absorbed through your body. It makes you go crazy, or it makes me go crazy. Gain weight, all kinds of stuff. But it is the only thing that works in times of real problems. But you should not fear an inhalated steroid, because the medication is really just targeting your lungs. There is some systemic absorption, but not anywhere to concern like an oral steroid would be. Which are all great questions, by the way, to ask your provider if you are concerned about taking an inhalated corticosteroid. But it does, they have probably been one of the greatest inventions on the market, I would say, in terms of asthma in asthma improvement, is inhalated steroids. And with that, I think I am going to go. I really kind of wanted this to be really basic, and it's already 22 minutes. If anyone has any questions or anything, feel free to let me know. I wanted just to raise awareness again that today is World Asthma Day, and that it is important to raise awareness about asthma. Okay, thanks. Bye.